Yeah.
So, thanks very much for sending the stuff over, and good to see you. Feels like an age
Been a
since
while,
before
yeah.
Christmas.
Yeah.
So, we want to talk first. Like, we've read the chapter, obviously, but if you go over your summary of
What I've been doing.
what you've been doing
Okay.
and where you think this chapter connects to what you've already done and what you intend to do, and then we'll sort of get on to feedback, if that sounds fair enough.
I told you I was transcribing. Someone's helped me transcribe,
Yeah.
but it didn't turn out the way it was, so I
Right.
started doing it myself. I've actually finished with it,
Right.
and after submitting this, the next step was to start picking out the different results from my data, the coding and everything for NVivo, and that's basically where I am.
So you're using NVivo to generate
Yes.
some themes.
Yes.
Okay. Are you finding that software helpful?
It's tough. It's very tough.
I'm not a big fan of it myself. to
I
be
must
perfectly
admit, I'm
honest
a
with
Luddite.
you.
I've been
I've
to,
got-
I've been to two
everything.
classes
Yeah.
and it's still not
Yeah.
Yeah.
getting in there. So.
And so what stage are you at with that? Is that's done for all of them now? Is it the transcription is done for all the?
For all of them.
All
yeah.
right, right.
For all of them. So, yeah.
Was it how many? Was it 37?
38.
38. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So well, yeah, that sounds like it's progress. I say, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of NVivo. So if it doesn't work out, you can always do more traditional
Just
Manual.
reading the
Thematic
stuff.
mathematical
Yeah, yeah.
analysis
Okay.
as well. So yeah, that's something to bear in mind
Okay.
for that.
So in terms of this chapter, connecting it back first to the literature review, and then your next chapters would be your methodology chapter, and then the actual data chapters.
Yeah.
How does this sit for you within what you've done and what you're gonna do?
Well, this is like the first draft. I know I didn't put everything that I had to put in there. But I think for me, because what I was trying to do is I was trying to see what I did in my literature review and what kind of issues I was talking about, like regarding citizenship, who's civil society in Nigeria, etc. So I kind of used, like, from what I read, the format to kind of shape this, but I know there's a lot more I have to put in there, like I said. So
In terms of the feedback we're going to give you today, it is quite critical feedback. We want you to bear in mind that we don't get you in here to kind of wag our fingers at you for fun.
okay.
But supervisor's job
Yeah.
is editor,
Mm.
but also to kind of like give you a bit of an overview of kind of where you're going.
Mm.
And both Sean and I are concerned,
Mm.
and we would rather be open with you
Yeah,
about the
okay.
level of
Yeah.
our concern, rather than you sort of just go, right, well they want me to do this, that and the
Yeah.
other, I'll get back and do it. There's kind of two tracks. One is, it seems to us you're moving quite slowly in terms of what you've turned out in work so far, and as you say, if you turned in this chapter and it was at the stage where it just needed tweaking, that would be fine. But as you say, it's a very early version of what you want to do here, which implies that there's a lot more work needs doing on it, and you have many more chapters to write. So there's a timing issue. Time is marching on, and you don't seem to be at the pace that we would expect someone who's now in year 3.
Okay.
The other aspect, and that's kind of a more complicated issue, is this work's not a PhD standard. And to get to PhD standard, although we can give you feedback on the issues you need to address, one of the things you're going to be getting at the end of this from us is a suggestion for how to restructure this work.
Okay.
Something has to click for you, and we can't make it click for you. Only kind of a lot more work and a lot more engagement can make it click for you. You look back to your progressions, you've been progressed both times, but if you read the report, particularly the second report, they brought up this issue of what we would term ownership.
Yeah.
That essentially you're not on top of understanding the kind of theoretical side and how you would apply it to the data that you've got. You've got a lot of interviews, presumably you've got great data, but you're not in charge of this project, is the feeling. So the fact that time is moving on, the fact that you're moving quite slowly, the fact that you're still not kind of in charge of this is the feeling I get from this. Those are things that make us worried.
Yeah, as I say, it's not obviously not necessarily what you want to hear at this stage, but I think I would echo that and say that some of the way that manifests itself is, the way the work started out was connected to the role of civil society in conflict and what it can do there. I didn't see very much of that in the actual chapter, and you mentioned some of the themes around democracy and citizenship, and they didn't really link back, I felt, to the nuts and bolts of the chapter, or the thesis, which is the role of civil society in peace building and conflict. And within the draft you submitted, I didn't see an awful lot of that, or certainly enough of that for how much would be needed in a piece of work of that type. Does that make sense? It was kind of very peripheral, and so, for example, there was only passing reference to Boko Haram, the Niger Delta insurgency, even the Fulani herdsmen, which are very, very active as well. I agree with you, that's an important issue, but I didn't think he gave that sort of thing enough prominence, really, and the ways in which you might look at the conflict. Because there's conflict, what role can civil society play in trying to, if you like, improve? What functions can it do to sort of, if you like, ameliorate the conflict, or make it a bit better? Does that make sense?
Yes, because I think one of the issues I had was I didn't know what to concentrate, what conflict, because there's so many conflicts.
Right.
And okay, I know I'm writing about basically Boko Haram and issues like that. Is it that I should pick issues like Boko Haram, like certain conflicts, and talk about them, or?
Well, if we're saying this chapter's doing two purposes, the first thing it's doing is, so far I've been talking in the abstract, looking at debates about what civil society is, who's in it, whether it applies outside Western context. I am only, in my work, really exploring this through the prism of Nigeria. So this chapter has to contextualise my Nigerian case study. So it has to provide you with that context and overview, and it has to say there's actually a relatively small amount of literature, although there's more literature than is in here about Nigerian civil society. Let's kind of draw out the themes and arguments and debates. Then at the end, I can justify who it is that I've gone to speak to, and I can say, what contributions I can make to this debate. To do that, you need to be kind of saying, right, so what is the context? And you spend a lot of time, for example, talking through the various kind of dictatorial regimes and then governments that follow them, but just kind of telling us some things about them. You don't mention Boko Haram to page 27, and they appear in one paragraph. So reorganising to say, this is Nigeria and its colonial history and the impact of colonialisation. This is the slip into dictatorship shortly after independence. This is the restoration of civilian government, if not a fully consolidated democracy. This is the history of conflicts, just telling the reader about what the conflicts are, what the fault lines are, about ethnicity, religion, language, or geography, all that. Then when you start to talk about the recent insurgency, you can say whether it is different, whether it is a manifestation of the same old grievances but in a new context, or if it is profoundly different. You have to explain who Boko Haram are. You are acting as if the person who's going to be reading this has never heard the word Nigeria in their life, and you're giving them that contextual information, and you're then moving on to say, but people are writing about this. It's an under-researched topic. Here is what's said. And at the moment, what it feels like is you're putting in a lot of content. This is about Nigeria, that's about Nigeria. It feels to us like you've put this early draft to us in the hope that we would say, that bit will go, maybe that bit less, maybe this bit more, maybe that bit less. And we have got feedback for you, which is about restructuring and content, and that is our job. But it is about you sort of saying, I have found out all this information, here you go, supervisors. Whereas it should be, I'm in charge of this project, and I'm here to say, I know what the context is, I know what the literature says, I know what my data will have to say. And this chapter doesn't say that.
Yeah, I mean, I think based on your comment there, you're saying you weren't sure which to focus on in terms of there's so many conflicts going on, and I think that's right. But you have to make then a decision whether you focus solely on Boko Haram, or you say I'm going to do Boko Haram and the Niger Delta, or I'm going to do Boko Haram, the Niger Delta, and the herdsmen. You have to. That's I think what we mean by ownership, in the sense that you have to be clear what you want to investigate, and really nail that down. So you
And
have
look
to
at
decide which what you think is feasible and what's going to be most useful based on the data that you have.
I mean, what questions you've asked people. If you've asked people about the multiple conflicts and you
Yeah.
have that information, or if the course of the interviews people are like, but never mind Boko Haram, that's just one of a number of conflicts, and you can glean enough information from what they've said, which is the great thing about a semi-structured interview. People chip in with things you haven't anticipated. But this chapter focuses a lot on democracy and democratisation. It's an important part of civil society's relationship with the Nigerian state. But you're not doing a democratisation PhD. You're doing something about what they can do to restore or ameliorate conflict, or the grievances that fuel the conflict, those kind of things.
And equally, I mean, if you find that all your interviewees really are focusing on Boko Haram, then maybe Boko Haram is the angle to take. So what have the people you've spoken to been? Has it primarily been that they've
The conflict, no, there have been issues that, like, from what you just said right now, I think I'm not sure if I should concentrate on what they really talked about, which was Fulani headsmen,
yeah
the issue of Boko Haram,
Uh-huh.
and just grievances
Yeah.
that has to do with marginalization and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I think that's a decision you have to make, and when you're setting out what the research is about, you have to be clear on what you're looking at. So if you've got enough data, I would say those are the three themes that they've mentioned, then those are the three themes to go for, and to really make central to the work. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. Now the problem is, I've done the interview. I have the data,
Yeah.
and I'm now trying to gather information from the data.
Sure.
Writing this chapter, what if I write about certain things and then my data is talking about something else?
Oh well, that's why I'm saying, in your data, you're saying that the people have been speaking about the Fulani herdsmen, the Boko Haram, and the general sort of inequalities, let's say, and the marginalisation and so on.
So therefore, you want to set in context
Yeah.
in this chapter the conflicts that you
Yeah.
have the data to talk about, and the problems that you have. Because you're going to sort of say, it's quite a brief overview at first. This is the legacy of colonialism. This is the legacy of the military dictatorships. This is the current state of play with the government. These are the conflicts. These are the fault lines on which these conflicts run. Those are relatively short.
Yeah.
You will need to talk about who's in civil society and what roles do they perform, and you then have to say this is what the state has failed to do in terms of resolving these conflicts or the grievances behind them. From the literature that I've read about the Nigerian situation in general and Nigerian civil society in particular, it suggests that they could do this, that and the other, or there's a very negative overview where it suggests that they can do very little. I then now need to see in my data if that is correct. There's some interesting points you make towards the end where you make this kind of suggestion that uncivil actors actually are very good at articulating grievances and maybe getting things done about them.
Yeah, I thought that was very interesting, and again, that's something that we'd like to see more of, that sort of thing. And I think this is where having done your interviews is going to be beneficial to you in thinking about this, because who you've spoken to will help inform your view as to what your belief of who you think is and isn't Nigerian civil society. So the types of groups and individuals you've spoken to and who they represent will also help you focus on that literature. Some people have said this and this is or isn't civil society, and so you've spoken to a number of groups which you can say, well, I think actually this group is or this group isn't, so that the groups you've spoken to presumably will represent your views as to what is a civil society organisation. So that's something you can think about when looking back.
Well, I was going to ask a question. Like I said, look at the data and picking out certain
Yeah.
themes from there.
Sure.
If, for example, I have to write this again, which I have to do, and the literature review, should the themes I get from my data, is that what I'll really focus on?
Yeah, because
Especially
the
for
whole
my
thing
literature
is
review
a
and
little
stuff.
bit of a cheat. When you present the PhD at the end, you pretend this was always what my literature review was going to say.
Yeah.
This is always what this chapter was going to say. But it's not true, because you go out and do the interviews, you come back and you actually refine. Well, actually, I need to know about this, that, and that. So now I need to go back and change that chapter. So yes, things change as you progress, and that's why I'm trying to get over to you the kind of slowness of your progress is a problem in itself, because it's only as more and more work comes together that you are actually get the confidence to direct yourself back to, I've talked far too much in the abstract in this little review chapter. I need to jump onto this particular topic or whatever it is, and it's why moving at a greater speed is necessary. It's not just about the boring practical constraints of you have a hand in day. It's about the more you do, the more you go, actually that bit didn't work and needs tweaking, and actually I hadn't said anything about what appears to be this key theme about uncivil actors and the fact that they themselves are not just the instigators of violence. They may be effective articulators of grievance. They may be able to offer some sort of leadership, which, if they could be encouraged to move on to a peaceful path, they themselves might actually end up civil actors. Those kind of things are only coming out now through your data. You do have to sort of cheat, if you like, and go back and go, I was always going to do this. But it's only as this material comes up and you are moving through it that you can keep racing between, like a little pinball in a machine, between chapters, tweaking them and making them all work together.
I mean, we have a suggested structure for how we would probably have liked to see
That's my problem. I think structure.
Yeah.
That's one of the.
No, I agree with you. Yeah. And that's kind of what we meant by ownership as well, because if you're still saying you're not sure what to include and what not to include, that affects the work then, because it does lack focus.
Yeah.
And so what you need is to say, right, the important things are the herdsmen, the Boko Haram, the Niger Delta, and the inequalities, and these are the things we need to focus on. And as I say, that you need to be clear on that, and once you've got that more clear in your mind, you're obviously better equipped to pursue that, because those are the things are the key things people have said to you and the information. So we'll give you this, but I'll just read you through them. So narrowed it down to about 7 points. So an opening section where you do discuss the political history of Nigeria, starting with when the country achieved independence and so on. But a very brief, you don't have to go into the same detail you did with all the governments, so you could just contextualize it. So the problems post-democracy, the ethnic divisions, the civil conflict, the problematic, let's say, types of government with military rule and coups and all the rest of it. And within that, we might have some reference to some general history books there as well. So histories of Nigeria by historians as well, to kind of, because their historians write well in this way and they're good at synthesizing all these kind of large events. Second thing then, within that, some of the problems facing the country, whether that's the ethnic divisions, weakness of central government, corruption, etc., civil war and conflict. Then we would like more and clearer detailed discussion of the rise of Boko Haram, for example, the Niger Delta violence, and also the Fulani herdsmen. So these were introduced and they're interesting, but
they didn't speak more about them.
No, they were kind of just almost dropped in there, whereas they need to be. It needs to be a very clear rationale for why they're there, and you need to explain why they're important, because they are important.
Yeah.
Then you'd say identify that the problems that are created by Boko Haram, Niger Delta, and the Fulani herdsmen, the violence and the conflict and the problems with the state, they open up a space for civil society organisations to fill. So then you would, after that section, you would outline what groups constitute Nigerian civil society, and a bit of discuss the debates around that literature. But you should take a clear position on what groups are or are not, and why. So again, this comes back to ownership. We need your account of what groups are and what groups aren't, and why they are or they aren't.
Okay.
Does that make sense? And so then the next one would be to identify the problem which links directly back to your research question. What can civil society organisations do to help prevent conflict or tackle some of the problems caused by this ethnic violence, caused by these groups? And then to conclude it, just by explaining how you're going to address this question, which will signpost readers to the next section and explain your reasons for your particular choice of research data. So it's all about clarity, context, and signposting. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Say, I've written this down, you can take this with you at the end, you know.
Yeah.
So
You want
that's...
to be able to say, if you're new to this topic, this is the factual information you need to know about Nigeria. This is what you need to know about the fault lines politically and socially that fuel the conflict and the conflict itself.
Yeah.
This is what has been written about these issues so far. There is either great agreement or there is huge disagreement over these particular issues. There are these possible ways in which civil society can solve these problems, or there's overwhelming pessimism that Nigerian civil society cannot solve these problems. You know, it's that. What's written already and what does it say? So what am I going to say to contribute to this debate?
Yeah, and explaining, you know, these organisations and these instances, why, you know, they don't just happen in a vacuum. They happen because of, so Boko Haram has come about because of, you know, the religious dimension, the ethnic violence, the problems with the state, all these things. You see, Niger Delta, there's obviously economic aspects to that as well, resources and so on. So you need to contextualise all that for the reader.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that make more
No,
sense?
it
Do you
does.
think?
It does.
Yeah. And had you any particular other questions then based on this, or based on?
I
what
just
was said?
think, like I said, I think the main issue I had was structure, and it's always been structure, even with the literature review, because I didn't know what to put on it, and this one too. But I think, because I actually, to be honest, I actually didn't read a lot about the Fulani headsmen,
Right.
because I was just reading quite different things that I
Yeah.
just felt I had to put in there. But
But your interview, the people you've spoken to,
I
they've
know.
spoken about that to you.
I know.
Yeah. So no,
So-
well, sorry, I was asking you.
No,
they have,
yes.
And so, well, that will help. You know, if they're flagging this up as a big issue, then we need context. We need to know what this is all about. You know, what their grievances are, how this has come about, and how it relates to, and can civil society, you know, obviously then the question is, can civil society help deal with this? Yeah. That more, do you feel more clear on?
Yeah, I think I know what to look for now.
Yeah. As I say, I think basically, if you can follow this plan, I think that would help, because you know, as you say, the structure was an issue, and so it didn't feel as controlled and as well thought out as it should have done.
Yeah.
And that's what we mean by up to the standard of the PhD. The PhD has to be very, it has to be very well structured. That's part of the requirements. So that's to take away from today, you know. So
In terms of what's next, by the start of next week, we'll have sent you Sean has some overall comments
Yeah.
and structure. I've written comments in the chapter. I'll get that all to you so you can review it. I would suggest that you have another bash at this chapter,
Okay.
and that we meet at the end of February
Okay.
to discuss a second draft.
Okay.
If we say that we meet in the last week of February, if the week before you send us through a redrafted work, and with some times that suit you for that last week,
Yeah.
and we'd source out a date then.
Okay.
So I check my emails periodically, but
Yeah.
Sean's
I'm
obviously
at
checking
my
very
desk.
regularly.
I'm at my desk most days. So
And if I haven't checked my emails that day, if something came through from you, Sean would alert me, so
Yeah.
I would see it that day.
Okay.
So,
So,
so even though, as well, you know, say I'm checking periodically,
yeah.
contact Sean.
Yeah.
You know, he's there for immediate response, and even though it might take me a few days between supervisions, I will always get back to
Yeah.
you as soon as I can.
So I think we will be looking to maybe push you on a little bit harder and a little bit faster than, you know, we might you know, work you a bit harder, so to speak, to get things back up to speed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. So that's,
I know I need a lot of guidance and stuff, but
no, well, you know, as I
Yeah.
say, it's once you get it clear in your mind, taking ownership, and you know, it is hard with the PhDs, but it's a hard bit of work.
I know.
It's not the easiest way to spend a few years by all accounts, but you know, getting the structure nailed. You know, hopefully once that's done, you got a lot of rich data then, which we can explore in more depth. Then, so once building a structure around that,
Okay.
but structural problems can be addressed
Uh,
with a lot of work.
I know. I
Yeah.
think, like I said, my problem is structure. Because once I know what to do, I know what to look for. And, right. But once I just structure, I bring in everything. I
Right.
think
Yeah.
it's-
Yeah. No, I
part
that's
of
to
it.
say we got that impression with.
So what you'll be
with
getting
this
is
piece of work.
feedback about content, but guidance about structure as well.
Yeah.
So hopefully that will give you the signposts that you want.
Yeah.
Okay.
So does that sound like a
Is that all right?
Sounds fine.
Yeah.
Alright.
Good.
Very
Good. I'll give you that to take
Alright.
with you there.
Thank you very much.
I'll
Wait,
email you my comment.
Yeah.
So you got it electronically.
Just one final that's a sort of a minor point. The text, there was a lot of sort of capital letters and all sort of out of place.
Oh.
Was there some sort of funny software? Was that?
No. Because I'm not really good at typing. I use
Right.
I use a note like a what do you call it? I write on my
All right.
tablet and then it turns into text.
Ah, right. Yeah.
So that's
give
why-
that a
I know,
check through
yeah.
before next time.
So-
Yeah. I was wondering. I thought there might have been some software
Yeah.
thing that you were using.
Was
Yeah.
that capital T?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. No. So yeah, just give it a good spell check the next time, and that'll do that for you. Yeah. So
Okay.
as I say, I was thinking, is there something up with Microsoft Word or something? You know.
Well, I did actually use the what do you call it, spell check. I don't know why.
Right?
Yeah,
Well, it might not pick up
Might not
capitals
pick
if
up
it's
capitals.
spelled properly, but
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, just give it a good read through
Okay.
next time. That's just a minor technical point.
Ah.
So yeah, we'll drop you a line. Pretty soon with the
Okay.
feedback, the typed up feedback, and then you'll get back to us on a date for next time.
So when you email through your chap saying in the last week I can do these times
Yeah.
and all sorts of
Let us know when you're available, and we'll work around that. Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
So,
Excellent.
thank you very much.
Not at all.
Plans for the weekend?
No, I just have a boring
Carrot
life.
table.
I'm trying to get this done.
All work, no play makes Jack and
Yeah,
all
yeah,
boys.
yeah.
so-
Well, I guess the first year was a little bit of
Yeah. Well, not saying you got to keep a balance as well, But you work hard Monday to Friday.
Have a life then.
You
at
can
the
have that
weekend.
at the weekend,
There's
So.
not much to do here.
Well, Huddersfield's not the most vibrant, exciting
What are you
place.
trying to say? It's not Vegas.
Yeah. We don't have the option of many casinos or to hang around. So yeah, but yeah, no, keep going and get stuck in. If there's any questions you have on structure in the meantime, give us a shout. Do it early. Rather than sort of leave it. Don't feel you can't ask.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that make sense? Good. Excellent.
Thank
Right.
you very
Well,
much.
we'll see you next time. Right.
Thank
All the
you.
best.
Oh,
my
oh,
fault.
Where are you?
Thank you very much. Bye.